All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Mentorship in Neonatology webinar by Future Neos Now. We are excited to have Dr. Morgan Hill and Dr. Patrick Myers with us tonight to speak a little bit about pursuing a career in neonatology. We can start off with some introductions. So Dr. Hill is an assistant professor of pediatrics and a neonatologist at Cincinnati Children's Hospital. She is the associate program director of the NICU Fellowship Program and is completing her master's in medical education. Her interests are in curriculum development, competency assessment, and delivery room resuscitation. She was recruited to Cincinnati after completing her training at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia in 2021. In her time at Cincinnati, she has developed an active video review program and maintains an active role in fellow education, including simulation. She is also actively involved in the ONTPD and the NNCC. And Dr. Myers is the Neonatal Perinatal Medicine Fellowship Director at Northwestern University. He is a past chair of the ONTPD and has served on committees for the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Board of Pediatrics, and the ACGME. His academic focus is on creating national curricula and resources for the medical educators and trainees. So without further ado, we will start our didactic session on applying to neonatology fellowship, and this will be followed by Q&A, so feel free to put any questions in the chat or save them for later. And I just want to give an overview that this is based on the article that was written by Dr. Hill and Dr. Myers on mentoring the future of neonatology, program director advice for fellowship applicants and their advisors, which was published in the Journal of Perinatology in 2025.
5 years. This is another way to look at the fairly similar data. So last year there was 107 programs. This year there's only 104. 5 programs didn't enter the match this year, so it's the first time less fellowships have applied, and a lot of that has to do with smaller programs not filling. Plus we had 2 new programs join the match. Kind of the staggering number here is that 27 of the 104 programs didn't fill, meaning that they didn't get a single fellow. And some of those are single fellow programs, but some of them have 2 or 3 fellows. So what's my take home from kind of this data is that neonatology is this really kind of odd specialty where it's actually only 4 people didn't match last year, right? And that number, 4 people, has gone down every year for a bunch of years. And that means that while neonatology is not competitive, the top 5 to 8 programs are highly, highly competitive. And so you get this weird thing where there's some programs that are really, really competitive and hard to get into. But everybody basically who wants to be a neonatologist will end up being a neonatologist. So the other, this is all just publicly available data from the NRMP and ERIS. So the average applicant applied to 23 programs. DOs 21, international medical grads applied to 36, and MDs applied to 14. My sense and the program director's sense is probably all of those numbers are too high. Because here's the next part is about 50% of people got their first choice in the match. About 20% got their second choice, and third choice about 10%. So over 75% of people ended up in the top 3, with most of it matching in their first choice. So signals, we'll talk about signals in a little bit here, but in 2025 was the first years we used signals. There were 3 gold signals, basically meaning like you're a top 3 choice. And there were 5 silver signals, meaning you were kind of a 4 through 8 choice, right? Almost everybody in of the applicant pool used their signals. And almost all the programs allowed signals to be used. So as an applicant, you can opt out, and as a program, you can opt out. Um, the average number of signals received was 15, 5 gold, 10 silver. The top program received 76, right? And so that's actually something like really important to kind of know is that the top programs are really getting a lot of signals. Um, and the smaller, like very good programs aren't really getting many signals at all, right? I know programs that um, I would be happy if people went to that got 2, 4 signals, right? Um, but just like, so signaling was rolled out in other medicine subspecialties and surgical subspecialties, it's very clear that the most competitive programs receive the most amount of signals, and the programs that are smaller but good don't receive very many. And that may have something to, may, you should think a little bit about what that means. And Morgan and I will actually have a discussion about this because our programs use this a little differently. And I think this is Morgan.
So I will take over from here. So, having this background data, I think, is very helpful for you all to kind of set the stage, knowing about how many people are going into neonatology, about how many people are matching versus not matching, right? And ultimately, our goal through all of this is to really help set you up for success, and help you find the program that's the best fit for you and help you be very competitive. And so, now we're going to talk a little bit about kind of some of the general recommendations that our group collectively came up with together. And we're going to just march through some things that you can do, really starting in medical school and then continuing on into residency, again, to make yourself kind of the best applicant for a neonatology fellowship. And so, first things first, I think this really cannot be emphasized enough. Find yourself some mentors and find yourself some very strong mentors, and reach out. Know that the neonatology community in general really want to help you. We have a lot of people that are very invested into kind of building the future of neonatology and maintaining our pipeline. We want to get to know you. We want to hear about medical students and residents that are interested in NICU. And so reach out to us. From a kind of national standpoint, we're already taking advantage of one of those connections right now through Future Neos Now. It's a great resource for you all to be connected with people in the community. And then also TCAN is a great resource. But I think probably even more importantly than that are just your local connections. And so one thing that we really wanted to emphasize today is that it is important to contact your local fellowship program leadership. If you have a fellowship program at your institution, don't be afraid to reach out to them, to email them. You can cold email people. You say that you're interested and you want to meet up. We all in the program director community, we want to hear from you and get to know you, and really reach out as soon as you think you have an interest in neonatology. It's never too early. And I would say, again, most people are eager to meet with trainees and talk through things with them. Talk to faculty, talk to program leaders, talk to some of the other fellows at your institution, and start looking for those mentors because they really will be a great source of support for you. Next thing is scholarship, right? So these mentors can help you in this area, certainly. And this is really one of the biggest things. Scholarship in general is a big change from residency. So when you shift from the world of your residency program to your fellowship program, scholarship and scholarly activity becomes a very large part of what you do. So really the ABP mandates that at least 12 months of your fellowship is dedicated to research, right? So this is going to be a focus, and therefore it's going to be a very important part of your discussion as you are applying to fellowship programs. And know that, right, your scholarly work does not mean basic science. It doesn't mean clinical research. It really can be anything. It can be translational research. It can be quality improvement research, medical education, public policy. There's a wide variety of things that you can get involved in. But I think it's important to know that it is going to be part of your life and fellowship, most certainly. And that we want to also help you start telling your story to set you up for success as you're thinking about applying to fellowship. So, really, kind of to that point, right, we know that all fellowship programs can mentor and need to mentor scholarly activity, but also fellowship programs have different strengths and weaknesses. And so, it's really helpful if you have a certain area of interest and a passion to really just explore what these different fellowship programs offer and if it is aligned with your interests. One of my biggest pieces of advice really is to use the program websites to see what are their current faculty doing, what types of research are they doing, and what are their current and former fellows doing. Very often on these program websites, they'll have a list of current and recently graduated fellows and some of their scholarly work in progress. And then you can see, are people doing, I'm really interested in global health. Are people doing global health research? Or I really want to do quality improvement. Is that a possibility? Or I'm a basic science researcher. Do they have the type of lab that I need? So go kind of exploring and see what the fellowship programs have to offer and if it's something that that you're interested in. And then with that in mind, know that like as you are kind of going through your journey through medical school and residency into fellowship, while scholarly activity is certainly an expectation of fellowship, there's really no hard and fast expectation that residents applying to fellowship have prior scholarly activity. That being said, please do know that applicants with prior scholarly activity are generally more competitive. And also know that when you do this scholarly activity, it doesn't have to necessarily be in neonatology. It is helpful if the research and projects you're doing align with your areas of interest. Really, because in general, you want to tell a story. You want to get involved with something that you're really passionate about. You want to have kind of longitudinal commitment and involvement in whatever project this is. And you want to have that be able to tell your story of how that is guiding you kind of on this pathway to neonatology. And so, really, just keep in mind in general, again, that not 100% mandatory that you do it, but if you do it, really the most important thing and the thing to remember is that the skills that you learn, kind of the type and amount and degree of contribution, your commitment to that work, and kind of your longitudinal involvement, that is what's most important. And then also kind of recommendations from your mentor that can speak to your involvement. That is going to, again, tell your story and help set you up for success. Other thing to think about when we are talking about really kind of telling your story and creating your little pathway, in addition to scholarly activities, of course, going to be your clinical experience and the rotations that you do. Some of this is going to be completely out of your control, and we very much know and appreciate that. Residency programs are changing all of their program requirements. Things are shifting. The landscape is different, and we know that. We recognize that as program directors. But we, in general, want to give you kind of recommendations for electives that'll be very helpful to you if and when you have the opportunity to pursue them. And so when we kind of really surveyed all of the program leadership, in both the ONTPD, all of the NICU program leadership, and then also in general, kind of outside of that, there really are kind of several critical rotations that we recommend specifically for NICU. And that includes, of course, as many level 3 and level 4 NICU rotations as you can do. Again, we know those rotation requirements are dropping. And for some residency programs, it might only be that you're required to do 1 month of NICU. But we would like you to do more and do elective time and have more experience, particularly, again, not just in level 3, but in level 4 when possible. This, for some of you, we again recognize that this might not be an option unless you pursue an away rotation. So we know that you're going to do what's kind of within the limits of your possibility. The other rotations that are helpful are sometimes NICU follow-up clinic and then spending some time in the newborn nursery or delivery room electives, again, as available. And then I'll just kind of speak to this now. We're going to get into your application later. But I think when you are applying, it's actually really helpful to speak to how much NICU experience you have. It's very helpful to us as program directors to say, I did 12 weeks of level 3 NICU. I did 8 weeks of level 4 NICU or whatever it may be, again, to help tell your story and let us know what your specific experiences are. And then just keep in mind, right? We do a lot of call in the NICU sometimes and we work nights. And so being able to demonstrate that you did that and have that experience can be helpful. Other thing just to mention to kind of pair with our rotation recommendations, right? We know again, there's a lot of things outside of the world of NICU and neonatology that are really helpful and will help you gain some kind of critical and impactful skills. And so some of the other kind of highly ranked rotations among program directors include things such as PICU, palliative care, inpatient cardiology or the CICU, doing infectious disease rotations, MFM rotations, spending some time in like a fetal care center or and high risk maternal counseling. All of those things can be helpful. And if you have really carved out those additional specific experiences, sometimes it can be helpful to speak to that in your application as well.
So Iris, right? Like maybe one of the really big ground rules is just actually be aware of what the requirements are when you apply to Iris, right? Some programs have very specific requirements, and actually some states have a requirement that people must have passed X, Y, or Z board, step, and it can be a little odd. If there's like oddities or very specific requirements, about certifying exams or specific things that a program or state requires, you can find all of that stuff on the website. And most people will not bury it because, from our perspective, you're applying to neonatology for the first time. We literally see hundreds of applicants a year. And so we kind of have seen where, like, oh, there's this great person who isn't meeting my metrics. And then you've got this back and forth email chain. So look on the websites. I would say that's one of the kind of big get advice and look on websites is probably the two easiest things you can do to be successful. Um, I cannot uh, um, explain how important perfect spelling and grammar are. And this is from somebody who is atrocious at spelling, and my grammar is okay. Um, for the people it matters to, it matters so highly that it can exclude you despite you being an amazing applicant. And I think one of the reasons that happens is because people really want to see the amount of attention to detail you can provide to something that should be important in your life if you're applying to neonatology. I think the other thing that is really important about the entire application is try to really think about it as not a chunk of experiences, some random hobbies, some um, random scores, a personal statement, some letters. Really put some thought. The best applications and the people who may not have the most beautiful pedigree, but still get really competitive offers and will match to places, are able to kind of think about the whole thing in its totality and really talk about a compelling, I thought about neonatology for these reasons. Here are the experiences that tie into me wanting to be a neonatologist, and here is where I want to what I want to do in the future. So if you can have a through line, um, that actually is can be quite helpful, right? Have lots of people read your application, right? Does it read well? Does it make sense? Friends, families, mentors. This one's a little hard, right? Especially if you're applying internally, and um, but you can have an associate program director in peds help you out here. Like have somebody who has actually read a lot of IRIS applications look at it. One of the weird things about IRIS too is the way you input it and the way we see it. Sometimes interact in a sort of janky way. And so having somebody who kind of knows where those rough potential like jarring transitions are would be is quite helpful. So personal statement, we've talked about this a lot, right? And what's important about the personal statement? It kind of essentially demonstrates good writing ability. You have to do a fair amount of writing, a more research intensive fellowship. You'll actually have to do a fair amount of writing for like abstracts, papers, and things like that. It helps us understand what your unique vision is. It tells us what your goals are, and shows us why the resident is applying to neonatology, right? If in that personal statement you can have a well articulated one or two sentence unique mission statement, that is really helpful, right? And I think finally, and this one is trips people up, right? Um, your personal statement should align with the fellowship you're applying to, right? If you say, I really am interested and passionate about our funded research, particularly that relates, and I want to raise a lot of mouse colonies and stain a lot of cells. And then you apply to a neonatology fellowship that has one fellow and has never had anybody who does bench research. They're going to look at your application like there's just no chance that this person is coming to me, right? Because there's dissonance between your application and what they can do. I don't know how you can do it, but I know for a fact that you can target specific fellowships. So you can write different personal statements to different people. And so if really geographies are really key for you, and maybe you do want to be a bench scientist, or maybe you don't, but you can find ways to write multiple personal statements. And so be thoughtful about, and this is where it's important to get a local mentor, like, well, what does Northwestern do, and how is it different than Rush versus U of C versus Loyola, right? There's like seven-ish fellowships in Chicago, and we're all have slightly different vibes. And if you're coming from Cincinnati, Morgan should be able to tell you roughly why they're different, and how you should target them differently. AI. So this is actually super interesting. There's John Philbott and Mackenzie Frost are writing a paper. They have the data. They have presented the data. They have not published it and aren't giving us the inside scoop. So there actually will be survey data on the program directors about what we actually think about AI. But here's like in a nutshell. We know that people use AI, right? In the future, most of us will use AI. There are a really, really wide range of what people think about AI. There is a tiny group. My guess is somewhere between 5 and 10% of program directors who passionately, unabidingly hate AI. Um, they 100% will use AI programs to determine if you used AI and will disqualify you if you do. Again, ask your local person if where you're playing hates AI or not. The problem with that is sort of like we all know that the AI detection programs are probably not particularly good at detecting it. My personal preference is I couldn't care less if you use AI or not. Just don't give me slop. And one of the problems is that if you use AI and you're a busy resident and you're overworked and maybe you're doing your application and also doing nights in the ED, it ends up there's a whole chunk of applications where you can tell it's just kind of a mushy statement, and a lot of it is mushy non-AI and a lot of it is kind of mushy AI. Like, don't live in that space if you can avoid it. Um, this is still me, right, Morgan?
Yep.
Yep. Sorry. This is really important. Submission date, right? So submission dates, get your application in by the time your fellowships can read them, which is approximately July 15th. That date will be published. I actually looked Sunday to see if IRIS and NRNP had updated their dates. All the dates have the approximate dates are what it's been in the last 5 years, but who knows if they'll change it by 7 days or something like that. It's really critical that you get your applications in pretty close to that. Fellowships, especially the bigger ones, will get a ton of applications. They will try to read them all and get interviews. And the one big difference between residency and fellowship is we're much, much tinier, right? Like the Northwestern PEDS residency selection committee is like 40 people. And I read all the files, one other person reads all the files, right? And so if it's late, um, either we will stop looking at Iris or only check Iris every couple of weeks for those like two or three stragglers. So if you, for whatever reason, life happens, because life happens to all of us, you can't get it in on time, like a quick nudge of like, hey, I'm so sorry, my application's late. It's in now, right? Um, the biggest problem by far is us, meaning like my colleagues. The letters of recommendation are always the thing that holds up applications. My personal advice is like if they ask for four and you've only got three, still submit. Like don't wait. Um, and just let them when they ask, just say like I'm waiting for a neonatologist to submit. I asked them in, December, right? So ask for letters early, get the letters in early. Don't be afraid to pester. Don't be afraid to get your local program director to pester. We are the problem. Sorry.
That's a perfect segue. So, letters are going to be another really kind of critical part of your application. In general, most programs require 3 to 4 letters of recommendation. Generally, one of those people is going to be your residency program director. Other really great people to consider would be your research mentors. Additionally, a neonatologist that you worked with clinically, either in the level 3 and or level 4 NICU. And then also keep in mind that it doesn't have to be neonatologists or research mentors. It can be another clinician in a different subspecialty that you worked with extensively that really knows you well and can speak to you really well. And you're going to kind of pick the panel of people again that can tell your story. So, when you are thinking about who this panel of people are going to be, I think it's really very, very critical, again, that you are choosing people that know you well and are willing to write you a strong letter of recommendation. And we really actually recommend that when you ask someone for a letter, you use that specific language and you say, are you willing to write me a strong letter of recommendation? That is important, right? We don't encourage you to pick someone who may not know you well. Maybe you only worked with for a week or so. We want you to pick people that know you, that can speak to you and your talents and your strengths, and can write you a strong letter. And it's okay to use that language and to make sure that you're picking the right people for you. And again, I would say as you're thinking about this and preparing, feel free to utilize your mentor to run through who your list of potential letter writers will be and say, hey, is this a good panel of people? Do you have other recommendations for me? Right? Talk with somebody familiar with the application process as you're making these plans. And just like Patrick mentioned, very important that you plan ahead. A couple pieces of advice are: one, just give us plenty of advance notice. In application season and interview season, it's busy. Everyone's busy. There's a ton of things going on between the new fellows starting and recruitment season about to start. So, like, give people advance notice. It's helpful. But also remember that you want to ask for letters kind of close to your clinical experience, right? Especially in those cases where you're asking for letters from a clinician or a neonatologist based on an experience that you had together during a clinical rotation. Please do not wait 6 months or a year to then ask for a letter. It makes it really difficult for letter writers to go back and to write a letter for you. So try to think about it early. And it actually can be very helpful to leading up to you asking a letter, say, hey, I'm going into neonatology. I'm actually really hoping to get a letter out of this rotation. I'm spending the next few weeks with you. I have these as my goals. This is what we want to work on together. Would it be okay, depending on how these things go, that I ask you for a letter after? And like get them setting up, thinking about that early can actually be really, really helpful than going into the application season.
I'm just going to add a important little carve out here is do not ask that super, super fancy, well-known neonatologist that you spend the weekend on service for a letter. Like those are the people who will throw you under the bus. Don't do it. Those letters are so painful to read because they literally have been doing this 50 years. There's no chance you're in their top one or two residents, even if you thought it went really well. The only time I would take a fancy neonatologist letter if I were you is if they said, I would love to write you a letter. Then say yes.
It's great advice. And then the last thing I'll say also to the letters too is, again, we've talked a lot about like trying to tell your story in your personal statement and in what scholarly activity you're doing and kind of what you're choosing. Use the letters to also tell your story and think about how you can guide your letter writers to talk about things that you want them to focus on. So I find it very helpful when applicants come to me and say, Morgan, we work together in the NICU. I really want you to talk about my communication skills and my medical knowledge and my clinical experience versus somebody might come to me and say, hey, I really want you to talk about our scholarly activity that we did together in research, right? Guide people. They're going to have your CV and they're going to have your personal statement. You should send those to them. But you want them to have a focus, right? And somewhere that they can really speak to. And then between all your letters, you'll truly be able to kind of tell all about you and help us as reviewers get to know you as a person in a way that we wouldn't be able to by just reading your application. Next thing that helps kind of augment this is also the experiences on ERAS. So you get to list all of the wonderful things that you do in medical school and residency that you feel are kind of noteworthy experiences. Keep in mind, again, don't make assumptions. We may not know what you're talking about. So don't really assume that we know what some certain club or committee or anything is. Try to kind of anchor every experience with a summary sentence of what that is, and please outline your specific roles, your responsibilities, and the skills that you developed as a result of participating in that experience. And then a last little fun thing, right? You guys always get to list a hobby in your application. This can actually be really a fun place to put some unique things about yourself to make you stand out. One of the things Many things that we hear very frequently are people like to cook and like to travel, but like put a unique twist on that. Tell us something a little bit different and specific to you so that, again, you can stand out in people's mind and we can remember you and we have something fun to talk about in interviews. Other things to just make note of with your experiences of what to include and perhaps maybe what not to include. So certainly very helpful to include any kind of regional and or national poster and or oral presentations. We want to hear a list of any of your publications, both peer and non-peer reviewed. And then when you're listing those things, including who your mentor is, can actually be very helpful to us in our very small neonatology community. Many people know each other, and it will help us partner you actually with the right people on the interview trail too. If we know who you worked with, what type of research you're doing, who your mentors are, helps us kind of make the right connections for you and help you get the most out of your interview day. And then you can also list any grant funding. Some of the things to exclude would be like small local presentations that you give within the residency program, those types of kind of small noon conference type talks don't necessarily need to be included and kind of just make sure you're anchoring on the more significant experiences.
So we've talked about this data again. I just wanted to kind of refresh it for people who came late. So we have 3 gold, meaning a top 3 choice, 5 silver, and that will be the same this year. Um, Almost everybody uses their signals, and I want to just expand a little bit, like to be really clear, like the medium number is 15, the max number was 76, but there are many programs who received very few signals, right? And so trying to figure out how do you put how many applicants you get, um, and how many applicants the program gets and how many signal and how you should signal to them is actually really, really complicated. Um, there are programs that they will literally interview every single applicant they get every year, right? I mean, there's programs that get 5 applicants. There's programs who get 35 programs that will always, so signaling may be good, but it doesn't actually change the interview thing. And it probably, if you're a strongish candidate, probably won't change very much how they rank you. We know this data very clearly from like orthopedic surgery. And my sense talking to some of the larger programs is that um, a lack of signal to a very competitive program that gets, 70 or 80 people per spot will make it harder for you to get an interview, right? Um, so, and the other thing is really, which is really clear, having the program directors are relatively close. We talk with each other a lot. It has become abundantly clear to us that we are all using this in an infinite number of different ways. And that is why, like, one of the themes of this talk is please find somebody trusted who knows neonatology program directors and is willing to reach out on your behalf. The amount of times I get calls from my colleagues who say, this is a completely amazing applicant. They really need to get to Chicago. Please tell me what you're thinking about or what matters to you as a program. I think those calls are appreciated, I think, bidirectionally, right? Um, So how does your program use internal applicants? I think that Morgan and I, when we were talking multiple times, it's become very clear that we're quite different. So our first go around for me, I very much used it to kind of shrink the amount of uh, applicants. Like I read every file twice, and then um, you were much more likely to get a interview if you gold signaled me, right? Because I needed to find people who weren't window shopping. It's like I'm in an interesting spot nationally, which is I'm very competitive, but the most competitive applicants are looking at like two or three other programs. And so often I'm a backup school for people who really want to go to CHOP or UCSF. And those people, like we describe as window shoppers, right? They're never coming. I know they're not coming. They know that they're not coming. And that silver single kind of told both of us a story, right? Conversely, there are people that I might not have thought about that signaled me gold. Um, and it really made me really think a little harder about their application and try to root out why I was of particular interest to them, right? Um, Morgan, how did your program use things?
So, this is very important for you all to know because unlike Dr. Myers, we actually really did not utilize signaling this year. In an effort to be incredibly cautious, not quite knowing yet or understanding how applicants would use signaling. So we did our applicant review like we always do and looked at them after the fact, but really didn't have much of an impact on our interviews. I admittedly cannot say for certain what we will do in the future, how this will evolve over time. But I think one of our general concerns, right? And I will like be completely frank, we live in Cincinnati. Sometimes people are like, I'm not moving to Ohio. There's no chance. And so we don't want to eliminate people just because they think they don't want to live in Ohio when really they might love it and they might change their mind. So we were conservative, we were cautious. But like Dr. Myers mentioned, that is not going to be true of all programs and not going to be true of some of the very competitive programs who might really very strictly use signals and almost require a signal. And so, again, I think kind of the take home message for you all is talk to people. Most certainly use your mentor to find out what the programs that you really are seeking and the programs that you're really interested in. Try to find out what they're doing and make sure, at a minimum, use your signals. Don't forget to use them. Please use your signals. And then try to have a thoughtful approach about how you want to distribute those.
Yeah. And I think that the conversation has to be for if you are interested in a highly competitive program, and I think most program directors will tell you roughly how competitive people are. We generally know. Um, Consider highly using those, at least a signal on some of those programs on your dream program, right? For sure, I received at least one phone call from people saying like, "Hey, your person from Northwestern only signaled me silver. Like, do they really want to come here?" Um, and so it, yeah, it will change over time. But right now, like have a conversation, really think about it. There's a lot of ways to play this. And a lot of it actually just boils down to like how many applicants is a program getting, right? How many applicants do they have and how many spots do they have? Um, so Okay, geographic signaling. Some people use this is again also we've been doing it for longer. I think programs know how they use it. Different programs again use it very differently. I basically ignore your signaling geographically for a couple reasons. One, I have all this information about actually what matters to me, like where you went to college, where your hometown was, where you went to med school, like where you did research, like, and I'm in Illinois, so like it's East, North Central is not actually my geographic preference. Like, what about all the people from Missouri, Iowa, Minnesota, and the Dakotas that apply to me, right? And like Morgan's programs suck all up all the Ohio programs. They don't actually care that much about Ohio, right? And so I don't use them a lot, I would say, but you don't know what programs will do. So I think that if you genuinely really need to move to like the mountain region or Northeast, put those signals in there. I think it cannot hurt. I don't think this type of signaling will hurt in any way, shape, or form. Um, and it can help you. So this is just kind of a real breakdown. So you've got geographic versus setting preferences, right? And what do you see? What do you put down and and what can we see, right? So if you put a preference identified, so only programs that you apply it to in that geographic region get it, um, and it's shared with programs you applied to. So if you don't have anything, you don't have any preferences shared with all the programs you apply to, like that this person didn't have a preference. And if you don't respond, it just ends up kind of like a big giant blank on our side. So you can't tell. Um, and so I think it does, again, doesn't hurt. Sarah, it sounds like you had a question. I saw a hand raised.
That's okay. I saw there's a Q&A at the end, so I will wait. Thank you though.
We're close anyways.
We can actually, on that note, we'll kind of zoom through some of the last things related to interviews specifically, and then we'll make sure we have some time for questions. So a couple just key important points for interviews. Know that offers generally occur between August and September. General recommendation is to try to schedule those interviews promptly. This is when it's really important to be incredibly professional, respond to your emails quickly, always be very kind and professional to everyone that you're interacting with. And then remember that if you need to change or cancel the interview, please let that program know as soon as
Same.
possible. And please do whatever you can to avoid a last minute cancellation. That's strongly discouraged. And right, just keep in mind that you're hurting another applicant by doing that. And then in general, if the program is asking you for any other supplemental information, try to return that document in a timely manner. And then for those of you who are couples matching, kind of reach out early and let them know about that. So again, just early, prompt, and respectful communication. As you are preparing for interviews, again, really helpful to do your homework, research programs, develop a list of questions that are specific to that program. Look about, if they give you your interview day beforehand and you can read up on faculty, that's very helpful to do so. And then just be prepared to talk in detail about your specific application. And anything in your application is fair game, right? So make sure that you have command of all that material and you can speak really well, especially to some of those scholarly experiences. Questions do commonly center around your scholarly interests and career goals, right? We want to know how your goals fit into our program and our program's goals, because at the end of the day, we want it to be a good fit and we want both people to be very happy. And then just as you can, practice, practice, practice with some friends.
So interviewing, I'll try to do this quick too, is before you start, like test and be confident in your Wi-Fi setup and audio setup. I mean, inevitably there's multiple people a year that fail to do this, and then like the programs will work with you, but it just makes you look more on top of your game. Really make sure your location and background look professional and are well lit. Background is critical. Uh, I had some unfortunate person who looked like they were kidnapped in a dungeon. Somebody looked like who just got out of bed. The program directors have all remembered the person who had the giant bong in the background. There were people there with inappropriate personal items. Like, just plan and look at it. It's such an easy like thing to do. It's yeah, it's this one like gets me, but it is. Dress like you're an in-person interview, right? Like it's Zoom, it's more casual, but act like it's not. Write down notes because like at some point all of the programs will look fairly similar, and so you actually kind of know what's going on. And then write short, specific thank you notes and send them via email. The saddest thing is getting lovely handcrafted notes 4 days after the match day. Has happened to me many times. um, Specific because almost every interviewer that you send an interview note will send that note on to the program director. And if all five of them look exactly the same, I don't actually quite know what to do those. So short and specific. It doesn't need to be more than about 2 or 3 sentences, but that is helpful. Dates. So these are all approximate based on last year's date. IRIS and NRMP will publish them. Very roughly, IRIS opens for you on the 1st. Make sure your application is ready by about the 15th. It's the second Wednesday of July. 1 year it was the 3rd. Interviews August to September. We didn't put it on here, but there's a Reddit, there's a Google form that is relatively accurate. There's like oopsies in there, but like it's not a bad place to start. And looking at it last year, the very first person, I don't know how they did it. They started interviewing, giving interviews a day after thing opened. The last one recorded was on September 29th. For sure, I've had years where I've interviewed waitlist people in October. And we don't have it on this presentation, but if you really need to go somewhere and you haven't heard from people, it's totally okay to send a program director a short note saying, I'm really interested in your program. Do you have any spots open? Like nobody will, it will not hurt you in any way, shape, or form. It might actually help you a lot. Rank order deadline is going to be about November the 18th. Please, please, please make sure you're certified. You have to push the certification button, and if you don't, you will not be in the match and be very sad. And then match day should be about December 2nd or 7th this year. Lots and lots of resources. Like we can't stress this enough. Find a friendly Neo program director or associate program director to talk to. TCAN is amazing. There are so many good people there to talk to who you can ask questions about programs specifically without having, Morgan and I's bias. It is really helpful for career development and just finding your people. It's good for Neo board prep and a whole bunch of stuff. Future Neos Now, awesome. Webinars, Instagram, YouTube. Um, ONTPD, this is a little bit odd, but if you are going to a major meeting, PAS, NCE, CHNC, and you're presenting and you're really interested in being in a region or a program, send that program an email and say, hey, Patrick, I'm going to be at PAS. Um, do you have time to brief? I'm really interested in applying to Northwestern. Do you have 10 minutes to talk or half an hour to do coffee or something like that? We will try to find somebody for you to talk. Like, really, we want this to be a win-win for everybody, right? We have a good YouTube channel, shout out. And the AAP and APPD run an annual pediatric subspecialty recruitment series where last year, I think it was 80-ish Neo programs had their own breakout rooms and applicants could go and briefly talk to program directors to get a kind of a preview, one-on-one FaceTime with people. I think it is going to be May 14th. It's not finalized, which why I didn't put the date. So just an advertisement for that. Um, Everything we talked about here in much more detail is in the Applying to Neonatology Fellowship, Mentoring the Futures of Neos paper. The rotation recommendations are there. And thank you and good luck. It's actually kind of an amazing job. Like, that's the other thing. I just started service and I have an endo fellow that she's going to be an endo fellow next year that I tried to convince to be a neo. And she said, no way. And I have one of my incoming fellows on service with me, and it just is kind of like amazing, um, like having those people in our communities. So, questions?
Hi. Uh, I'm Sarah. I'm at Seattle. Thanks for the great presentation. And I kind of wanted to ask a question about how to be strategic with signals, especially geographic signals. So let's say that, you're interested, like really interested in a handful of programs. Maybe your top program is in a different region from like the rest of your programs. Like let's say a couple gold signals and a few silver signals are all in one region. I'm just wondering if I'm like really passionate and serious about a program, but it's maybe the only program in that geographical area, is it going to send a mixed signal for me to give that program a gold signal and then like maybe give other geographic regions, like my geographic signal? I just want to make sure I'm like coming across consistent in my application.
I mean, my general sense is no. I think go for it, right? Like, I think for the really competitive programs, the gold and silver will be much more compelling than your geographic signal. And the other thing is, like, you're doing this for the first time, like the competitive programs are reading 150 files a year, so and have been doing it for 10 or 15 years. And so they have a sense of like, yes, there just is a bunch of people who really would like to stay in Seattle, but for but actually also for whatever reason really love Baylor, right? Like that just is that's totally fine. So like you can that inconsistency isn't an inconsistency. The inconsistencies that are problematic is if you say, I want to do a QI in one spot and then I want to do bench in another spot. And then I'd also like to do palliative care, but like med ed simulations, like amazing, right? Like that is a little dissident, but like those signals are you're totally good to go. Morgan, I don't know what you're saying.
I second that completely. I think the signals, the gold and silver signals, the gold in particular, are going to be very helpful for you to be able to signal your intent to competitive programs that you're very sincerely interested in. And then geographically, right? Like we all know somebody might have a favorite area of the country that they live in, but like the reality is the programs you're interested in might be in a diverse area of the country, and we get that, right? So I think don't stress too much about the geographic signals.
Okay, thank you.
We also have a ton of data on geographic stuff, right? Like I get your med school stuff, right? And all the other stuff you put in geographically. So if I like I can even if you signal me geographically, like but everything else lives in the Northwest, right? Like I still will be like, okay, like interesting, right? That actually may be it's not bad, but I probably will ask you about it.
That
Right.
makes
We have a
sense. Thank you.
great question in the chat. So it's coming from a medical student that has a strong interest in neonatology, wondering what qualities, both personal and professional, we like to see in applicants. We'll talk about that one first. So I think honestly, for me, I really like to see people that clearly have a very strong work ethic, and have, again, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but have kind of demonstrated commitment to something and follow through on something that they're clearly passionate about and will be able to really speak to and tell a story about. And so I don't necessarily need to look for like one specific area of interest. I like people that have very diverse areas of interest, but just want people that are clearly responsible, professional, committed, and have had that follow through, I think is really very, very helpful. Some of the personal qualities actually kind of very shine through as you're going through the application process too, right? Like we are looking for people who are kind and courteous and polite and again, professional. And so your interactions, even on email with the program coordinators and other people, can like speak volumes. And that's very important too. And then the second part of the question really is kind of speaking to opportunities that we would recommend to get involved with going through clinical years of medical school and then through residency. So that's a great question. In medical school, I would say if you can seek out opportunities to do an elective in the NICU, very often as a medical student, you could do a like either acting internship or kind of a more intensive clinical experience in a level three or not often a level four. I would say more primarily a level three NICU. And then sometimes like in the newborn nursery, having those experiences early can be very helpful. And again, even in medical school, don't be afraid to reach out to the program leaders at your medical school and get connected. Very often people are eager and willing to get you involved in some kind of scholarly activity during medical school and start having you play a role in some of those projects. And then that holds true, I think, as you go through pediatric residency. Just seek out as many electives as you can in newborn medicine or neonatology. That will be very helpful to you, or the relevant kind of follow-up longitudinal experiences. Patrick, other thoughts?
Yeah, I would agree. I think that the two things to add maybe are like people skills are actually so critical in Neo. I think people will forget about that. Like the way I conceptualize it at 2 or 3 in the morning, after you've had a horrific code and you've been able to lead that, do you have the kind of interpersonal skills to take a deep breath, walk over to the next room where the mom or dad are losing it about a 2 ml residual on a 40 ml feed, right? Like, and do you have the ability to like kind of have that interpersonal interactions? Because I think our parents really deserve people who are willing to kind of commit to them across a lot of, and commit to them when it's actually very hard as a physician to commit. Um, the other thing is, I think, especially if you're like in med school, um, is longitudinal experience. Like the strongest residency applicants and the strongest fellowship applicants are people who have picked a project, and it really doesn't even need to be Neo, and have done it for a while, or picked a theme and done it for a while. because those letters of recommendations and those personal calls you get are so strong. And so if you can find somebody who can advocate for you over, and honestly, if you like then get into residency and are like, Neo, what? No way. I'm doing endo. That neonatologist that you met as a med student is still actually going to go to bat for you in endocrinology.
We had another question come through as a direct message in the chat. That said, as asking, how do you view a chief year as a part of an applicant's competitiveness?
So I think I divide them internal, external. External chief year is amazing because so sometimes like people, if you're good about getting a letter writer, the letter writer should be able to really like talk you up. Nobody, and occasionally maybe like it's not quite as accurate as you would hope from the program director side of things. Nobody picks a terrible chief, right? Like there just is no PEDS program director who's going to be like, well, this person's pretty mediocre. Let's make them chief, right? And so as an external chief, it can be a very strong endorsement of clinical competency. Internal chiefs, right, are a little bit tricky because I actually know very well who you are already. And so I don't need that stamp of approval. But other programs view it quite differently. And so this is again where find your local friend and have them figure out with you what if it matters internally or not. Morgan?
No, I agree with all of that. I think kind of similar to maybe how some programs might review applications and say, oh, you're an MD PhD, you kind of have a boost if they're looking for that. If you review applications and we see that you're a chief, often that may give you a boost either on an objective review or subjective review. Because just as Dr. Myers mentioned, right, generally people that are chosen as chiefs are technically like clinically strong, good leaders, good communicators, pretty dedicated, passionate people.
And then we had one more come through as a direct question. And this person asked, can you talk a little bit about how much research experience or other experiences from medical school to include on your fellowship applications?
I would say everything, right? So I think one of the things that's interesting about residency is people are really busy, right? Like you're working hard, you're shifting like focus every 2 to 4 weeks as you move rotations. You are not sleeping as much as really you should. So it can be hard to be extremely productive during residency. Like some people sort of manage it, but nobody like crushes it. Like even those MD PhDs are like who are fast tracking it aren't crushing it. Um, so if you're interested in having a research career or interested in kind of applying to a program that has a much stronger research focus, your undergrad in medical school research actually works as a very nice proxy. So I would say for sure, I would say 100% at it. Um, and we have a general sense of like, yes, of course you didn't do much, like you were working like a dog for 3 years. Dr. Hill.
I agree with that. Um, just when you are including experiences, just remember, right, like you want to describe and give us context. What did you do? What was your specific role? How was that important and impactful to you? But definitely feel free to include all of those. I've even seen some people include slightly more historical information too, if it was very meaningful and impactful, i.e., things before medical school.
Megan, do you mind if we answer some of the pre-submitted questions? Okay.
Yeah, as long as you guys have time for it tonight, I think that'd be awesome. Back for
Yeah.
your guys' time, no worries.
Yeah, for sure. So I think one that was really interesting to me was like, does one step three a failed attempt decrease an applicant's odds of matching, right? And I would even say broaden this, right? Because when you're applying to, um, you know, what happens when you fail, I think is the question, right? It really depends on the program, right? Some programs will view this pretty adversely. and some couldn't care less, right? Um, I tend to be in the bucket of not caring a ton. What I'm really looking for is the entire package, and there is no perfect applicant, right? Like the most prestigious, most well-published person, those files, every person's a complete person, and all of us have things we do well and things that we struggle with, right? So when I look at app with failed steps, I'm really just trying to get a sense of do in totality is this person going to be an amazing doctor, right? And like jumping through the board hoops is part of it. You've got to do it. Um, I would say if you failed multiple times, it gets a little bit more concerning because PEDS boards are hard and Neo boards are a lot harder. Um, but it's not a disqualifier, but it will be for some programs, unfortunately. Um, and it's pretty closely guarded. I can give you a couple guesses, but most people probably don't know. Morgan, I don't know what you guys do or think.
No, I agree. I think thinking about the entire applicant in full context is helpful. But admittedly, I think you're right. Like the multiple failed attempts sometimes is what can be concerning. And just know, I think that like some of the other things we've discussed tonight, a fail may be a way to be screened out of some of the more competitive programs, but is most certainly not a deal breaker. And remember exactly what we talked about at the very beginning. If you're looking at total numbers of positions available and applicants, right? Like I don't want you to be discouraged if there's a fail, right? Like you will find a home in a good program for you.
There's a lot of very good programs out there, I think is the reality. Like,
Mhm.
I know having chaired the program directors, like generally the group is actually very strong and we do a pretty good job. I would say that maybe a more disqualifying thing is if you fib on your application, right? Like that makes me nervous. And the reality is we're a really, really tiny community. And so if you fib and I know you fibbed, like, oh, I don't know. And personally, not a good look for me. So just be honest, right? And that's part of it, having of people like reviewing it. Um, how do you choose different fellowships? I think is a different one we got, right? Or how do you choose general different PEDS residencies is another one too. I think it's hard to know. I think my personal sense is network, network, network. You for sure will know some med school students, some undergraduate. I went to Notre Dame, you went to Notre Dame. I see you're like in the Neo Fellowship. Like, what can you tell me about it? Right? Like those like tangential connections, like I think are actually often a nice way to like reach out to somebody. And for the most part, like we're a pretty friendly community, both in PEDS and Neo, and people will be willing to kind of like hop on a Zoom or a phone call with you. So ask around, ask for alumni. Alumni, the class that just matched is amazing because they've got no skin in the game, right? And they will be brutally honest, which is exactly what you want. Um, and then look at alumni, right? Like, what are these people doing? Like, is everybody going to private practice? And I'm going to go to private practice, and they're going to good places, and they're going all over the country. Like, okay, awesome, right? Everybody doing bench research, and I kind of hate bench research. Like, well, maybe the program looks is fancy, but may actually, you're going to have to slog through 3 years of bench research. And do you want to do that? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not.
We just had one more question come through in the chat as well about from someone who's an IMG, and they're asking if they need a visa, how does that impact your consideration of them when offering interviews?
I think this is another thing that's going to be probably very program specific, and so hard to answer in a very general way. But I would say that there are many programs in neonatology, many neonatology programs that look very favorably upon applicants that have a visa, and that shouldn't be a general discourager. Again, ask around, find a mentor, and you'll be able to kind of understand and know if there are programs that generally do or generally don't take applicants on visas.
And you can also see on a lot of websites, people will list their current residents, current alumni, so you kind of have a sense. Yeah, some people will read blind and then look at visas. And the other problem is in the last 12 to 18 months, it's been a little unclear uh, from the institutional side, like how much it costs or doesn't cost to have a. And so my sense is it will just keep changing. But overall, I think that, there were what, 308 applicants, of which only four of them failed to find a spot. Like you'll find if you're an international medical student or on a visa, you'll find a place to be and people generally really want those applicants. Academic versus private practice is our last question, maybe. Yeah. So I've worked in both actually. So my wife is the much more fancy academic neonatologist. Um, and when I graduated, she was very happy in U of C. And so the only job in the Chicago area that I could find was private practice. Um, Very roughly, it's a little bit more lucrative. Um, you work more hours. Um, your time off is your time off. You don't really like you do clinical service and then you can do whatever you want the rest of the time, which is nice. Um, you get to keep all the procedures. Like that's actually maybe my only beef of being an academic neonatologist is my fellows keep stealing my procedures. Um, which is great for them. But like it's actually like I love going to deliveries and like putting in UVCs and like intubating all the babies. So, um, but overall, I actually really liked it. Um, it's fun. Like seeing babies is great. And so, and there's a huge variety. There's like level twos where you might have one kid on CPAP um, and nothing else. And there are some private practices. I have one of my fellows interviewed somewhere just recently. It's a 105 bed private practice unit that has ECMO and cardiac surgeons. So everything in between. So I think you're not really limiting where you can practice. Academic um, is slightly less lucrative. The bonuses for sure are less lucrative. Um, you spend less time doing clinical work, but like if you're ambitious and want to get a raise and get promoted, you are working a lot on non-academic, like academic stuff, not clinical stuff, right? So you're writing papers or meeting on a Friday afternoon, Morgan, and talking about like the next research project and talking in the car on the way home. So it's just like different. It's interesting because it I guess gave me more flexibility to be around my kids, right? Um, like if my daughter was uh had a ballet concert, I can just go do the ballet concert. Like the work still has to get done. I'm probably going to do it on a Saturday night. So it's a balance there. I think better work-life balance, but like the actual hours are the same or more. Um, you get to work with trainees, which is like kind of amazing. Um, Generally, you get to work with like more complicated kids, but there are for sure are probably 10 or 20 very big private practice units in the country where they're equivalent. I don't know what else I'm missing, Morgan.
No, the only thing really I'll add to that is I think I have now 4.5, 5 years out. I've just grown to appreciate the diversity in both academic positions and in private practice positions. And so it is not black and white. And you can kind of carve out the job that you want in either academic medicine or private practice. And so my general advice is like think about what you love most about neonatology in the field and what are the other extra things that you like to do outside of just maybe taking care of babies. And if you are really passionate about clinical research, right? You're going to stay in academics. If you're really passionate about QI, you could probably accomplish that in either private practice or academics. If really you say, hey, I don't want to do anything other than take care of babies, private might be the right thing for you. But know that all of these models at different private practices and different academic centers are going to look very different. And everyone's job description that I work with is very different. And you have a lot of flexibility to kind of carve out the right job for you between combination of protected time and academic time and clinical time between level 3, level 4, level 2, whatever you're doing. So just know that like a lot of things exist and ask questions of people and be curious to find out what's out there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for all of your guys' insight and for this wonderful presentation tonight. This was so helpful, and we are so thankful that you guys were willing to spend your night here with us and share all of this information.
Thank you so much for having us. And also know that Dr. Myers and I are available. We said reach out to mentors, find people. You can always get a hold of us too, and we're happy to talk about neonatology anytime. We love what we do, and we want to get you all excited about it too.
Yeah, I mean, I think we really like as a community, it's one of my favorite things about being a program director is actually the other program directors. People are really excited about the trainees and trying to make this work out the best for everybody involved. So like Morgan said, please reach out. Like we're always happy to chat or email.
Thank you
Okay.
so much.